is Sean from Montana. Hey, Sean, what's up?
Hello, and good morning. Thanks for taking my call on this Tuesday morning. I think what I heard before when I was calling in is I was listening to the fact about, like, okay, if they end up losing Tatum for the rest of the series and for next year, biggest question would be for Brad Stevens would be, like, where do you go from here? I mean, what moves would you make? I mean, we've heard reports that this team, if they lose this series, could be breaking up their core this summer and stuff too. So that's another big question. Another question because you're smarter than I am and other people are. I mean, I'm smart too. I mean, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to be neutral and being respectful for everybody else. But the other thing I can say too is, well, then what does that do for Joe Mazzulla? You've had people that have been wanting him to be fired if they lose this series. I don't see Mazzulla getting fired, though. But honestly, the future of the Celtics looks, bright. But again, next year, let's say they make the playoffs without Tatum, you wouldn't expect maybe by this time next year for a deep run. I mean, I got to say this, too, and everybody, I think, would come in general agreement. Right now, it's been very frustrating with Boston sports in general. Like, the Red Sox are dealing with the Rafael Devers drama that's going on. The Boston Bruins are facing uncertainty. The Boston Celtics, of course, getting hit with this massive blow about Tatum. And then, the Patriots have done well with drafting well. But it's really sad because we want to keep these teams on top. As fans, we want to see them succeed and stuff, too. But it's just, you get so sick of the drama, and then, of course, lastly, the injuries and stuff, too. But as a Celtic fan, I can tell you, I'm not really sure, real quickly, about if they're going to win Game 5 tomorrow. I hope they do, but I don't know. It's just Tatum's blow hurts.
Sean, you made some great points and asked some great questions. Curtis said earlier he thinks the Celtics win this game tomorrow night. So that's good.
Curtis, I also heard you yesterday on the way to the airport saying that you think Mazzulla would lose his job.
That injury saved his job.
Probably.
If don't you think?
Yeah,
probably.
So I think Curtis. Listen, if they were bounced in the second round by this Knicks team, and there wasn't the Tatum injury, then everything would be on the table when it comes to Joe Mazzulla, because it would be a shocking exit from the but now Mazzulla has an out, I think, on this.
I agree, but I would just go back to starting with Ime's year here. The Celtics get to the NBA Finals with Marcus Smart on a roster that we all believe is not as talented as this one, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The next year, Mazzulla's first year, they reach the conference final and lose to an inferior Miami Heat team. Then they win a championship. And then the next year, they lose in the second round to an inferior Knicks team. That is not a great track record. Without Marcus Smart and adding Holiday and Porzingis and all of these guys, when Wiggy and I both said at the time that what unlocked Jaylen and Jayson more than anything was the departure of Marcus Smart. And so for Mazzulla in 3 years as the head coach to reach one finals, that to me would be a disappointment.
But when it comes to coaching this team and looking specifically at last night, like you shouldn't have to. You don't have to coach NBA guys on playing defense. I mean, I know none of them want to do it. But there was nothing on that side of the ball last night from the Celtics.
Yeah, they definitely
we talked about Jayson Tatum stole the ball, a bunch of steals last night. Fine, but they could not. Those Knicks had 40-plus points. They had to have had 40-plus points in the paint last night.
Yeah, they had too many pick and rolls that led to easy layups easy layups.
And the offensive rebounds?
Yeah, they gave up a ton of offensive rebounds, which led to
it was so frustrating.
And Greg,
second and third chance opportunities.
What about the third quarters? The third quarters this entire series where you're coming out of halftime, you have time to figure things out, and Thibodeau was dunked on Mazzulla with his 3 strands of oddly greased hair.
See, I would run a blitz at Jalen Brunson anytime he gets the ball and say, okay, he's not going to have 18 points in the third quarter. I'm going to run a blitz at him, and Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, those other guys, OG, Anunoby, those guys are going to have to beat me. But I think the bigger picture is now as we sit here and we wait for the Tatum outcome is where does this team go? Because I mean, listen, I'm like everybody else. I'm wishing on a prayer that they can win this series, but I think it's going to be extremely difficult to do it. It's going to be tough. Maybe they win Game 5, just pure momentum. They shoot the ball well, but then they go back to New York and lose this series. Where do you go from here, especially with a new owner and all that money? If they had the same owner, maybe Wick goes, I'm willing to spend that money. I'm willing to, and Curtis always talks about it, I'm willing to be in this new penalty luxury tax for 2 years. But where do you go from here?
But Billy Chisholm doesn't want to come in here and start a rebuild either.
Yeah, but
because if you do that, okay, so we don't see Tatum next year, say. Worst case scenario, we don't see him next year. Now you want Tatum coming back to a completely new team.
But are you going to bring everybody back? Are you going to bring Porzingis back,
No.
Drew Holiday back, Derek White back, Pritchard back? And, I mean, obviously, Jaylen Brown. Well, is that going to be your team that you run it back with Tatum, maybe shelled for next year, and you're paying that high amount of money?
Well, no, and then I guess you can ask the question about, is Joe Mazzulla the right guy to run it back with?
But here's what last night meant, Greg, and the reason it was so demoralizing. It's the end of this season's championship hopes, I believe. And this enables the new management team to get under that apron, because without Tatum, you're not going to be nearly as dominant next year. So Porzingis, given his playoff performance, whatever, I think there's no shot they're in the second apron next year, especially now with Tatum done for likely parts of next season, too.
Because the new owner says, you know what? All right, we're not going to have Tatum next year. The chances of winning the championship are slim. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to clean the slate clean financially, and then we're going to prepare for when Tatum comes back the following year, when he's good to go and he's healthy. And now what does that team look like, this new team look like?
It's just shocking to be in this position when a couple of weeks ago you were certain that it was a repeat
in a dynasty, and then figuring like we were talking about, all right, if they go back to back, maybe it's a little bit easier to move on from some of those plays, or maybe it's harder to move on from those plays. But right now, without Tatum, that's the biggest thing. If it comes back and he's done for next year and the playoffs this year, if you're the new owner.
Just to be clear, because I keep seeing text messages about it when we talk about Jayson Tatum, he has the MRI today.
Right.
We're not saying that he's done, but it seems more than likely that he's done. I mean, he would get up.
Yes.
Whether Joe Mazzulla was telling him to get up or not, he would get up.
And after how big of a deal everybody made about him being a baby the last time, just a few weeks ago, he would try his absolute hardest to get up. That was bad.
Well, he stayed on the floor for a little while when on the wrist again.
Yeah,
but he was like,
he
right. But that's
he does.
But that's like an injury that you re-aggravate during the game. You get up, you go back to the line.
Yeah.
But this was an injury that you could tell in his facial expression, like B, the way it was a non-contact injury, because if it's an ankle injury and he lands on somebody's foot, you can go, okay, maybe he has a severe ankle sprain. And then when he's in the back and they're wheeling him in the wheelchair and he's crying, and then to listen to Jaylen Brown. Oh, it wasn't Jaylen Brown. Who was the person that reported that it was like the vibe was totally different?
That's Jaylen, who was talking about in the locker room.
Talking about the vibe.
No, we talked about that it was like a quiet locker room. That was Brian Windhorst who said that.
Yeah. So like as a player, like if I'm in that locker room, the first thing I'm doing is I'm be like, yo, Jay, what's up? You know what I mean? Like, hey, what's going on with JT? And guys have been around it. They've probably seen guys hurt their Achilles, and maybe word gets around. It's like it doesn't look good. And so now the vibe is like demoralizing because you know what the outcome potentially could be.
I thought it was unseemly that after the injury, Mike Breen and Doris Burke high-fived. Did you see that? That was a little bit, I don't know. I wouldn't have done that. But honestly, guys, this just sucks because to be where they are with the way the East has unfolded, they were going to, if they win that game last night, they win the series in 6 or 7, they get to the finals again, and you have a shot at back-to-back. And now the entire future is up in the air. And I would just like to hear from someone explain to me why Joe Mazzulla deserves to be, not saying he should be fired, but what has he done well this series, especially against Thibodeau? Because you're down 3-1. Even without Tatum, you're a more talented team than the Knicks. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
I mean, you don't think it's brilliant strategy, Curtis, to go out and foul a guy because he's not good at the line? I mean, that's sheer.
When they're not even in the bonus.
That's sheer brilliance. Get your team into the bonus.
They'll give Mazzulla one more year because of the Tatum injury, but even then now.
Are you turning on him?
No.
You called him the best coach in the NBA.
I said he's being outcoached, but I don't think that the team is going to pull the plug on him 1 year after he won a chip. Granted, they haven't lived up to, and I said this would be the biggest choke job, in my opinion, for a Boston sports team that our expectations were so high on. But I think they'll probably give him one more year. But even if they give him one more year, the ownership group, it's like you're getting a team that your best player isn't going to be there. So how good could you possibly be?
So we talked a little bit about this because Curtis was comparing it to simply to New York teams.
Mm-hmm.
But who's in your conversation when it comes to – so you're talking expectation.
Yep.
Which is Celtics repeat.
Yep.
They did it with ease they won it with ease last year.
Yep.
And they should repeat with ease this year.
Yep.
You're talking expectation and then choke.
Yep.
Who else is in that conversation for you?
Oh, man.
Patriots losing to the Giants.
I would say Patriots 07 was a huge choke job, losing to the Giants. I would say the expectations of that Bruins record season going into the season, they'd be good. I think it would be a choke job that they lost, but it's not a bigger choke job than a team that's coming off a championship.
Right.
Bruins on that Stanley Cup run, that was a choke.
I would say this. I wouldn't necessarily say that.
What, you mean when they got to Game 7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a massive choke.
I was
at the Grand waiting for the after party. It was a massive choke.
Oh, me too. Greg was trying to hook up with a player that night.
I wouldn't say the team, but the 2011 Celtics when they lost to the Lakers and Game 7,
they had a 10-point lead in the second half.
Yes, where at the time, we know him as Ron Artest, but I think it was Meta World Peace. Basically, put that team on the back when Kobe couldn't throw the ball. I would say that's a choke, but I don't think there's another team that's even close. Where we were talking about back-to-back.
Your memory works in weird ways. You don't know a single coworker's name that you work with every day, but you remember the period where Ron Artest was Meta World Peace.
Yes, some names I'm better with others.
But I would ask, I don't know if choke is the right word, but upset.
Not with Ron Artest, it's not. No, but yes,
right. Or Latrell Sprewell.
But Curtis, isn't an upset basically a choke job?
I don't. Maybe you're right. I just feel like the odds entering this series. Ken and I did it on Saturday. The Knicks were a bigger underdog to win this series than the Giants were to beat the Patriots in 2007. And so for me, I recognize you guys are probably right. Mazzulla's not going to get fired, especially now that Tatum is hurt. However, simple things like inbounding plays or final shot of a quarter, final shot of a game, where it just appears that there is no forethought, that it's just give the ball to Jayson Tatum, have him dribble 50 times and then shoot. Or there's no answers in these third quarters. I would love to see the composite stats of third quarter point differential through 5 games.
Right.
It's got to be the Knicks by 60 points.
It probably is. Yeah. And it doesn't help Mazzulla that games 1 and 2, you didn't get a shot up at the end of the game.
I mean, 1 and 2, winning those games, who knows what does or doesn't happen with Jayson Tatum, but that's a choke.
Yeah,
those two at home,
and you didn't even get a shot up at the
end
of the game.
20 plus.
Yeah. No, I that's why I don't see anything else, because the expectations were that to get to the NBA Finals. All right, if you lose in the NBA Finals to OKC and they're just a better team than you, all right, maybe we're not calling it a choke job, but to lose in round 2 to a Knicks team that you were up by 20 in game 1 and game 2, it's like that to me is the definition of choke job.